Oh, there it is. We are live. What's up, wrestling fans? This is the Two Bros Wrestling Show. We actually still do this. We've just been on a small break.
It's a summer break. It's been about a month and a half since we've seen the folks, Doug, but gosh, it seems in many ways way longer than that.
Unfortunately, absolutely nothing happened during this break. It's been a very slow wrestling news cycle. So
maybe that's why it feels like it's been even longer than what it's been. All of the wrestling world has been abuzz. I guess if we were to pick a week to come back, we picked a good one. Obviously, we were going to get the folks ready for SummerSlam. That is our main event topic, everybody. So if you're watching this on delay, 5-10 minutes, if you want to get right to that, that's probably when we'll be starting the main event. But Doug, we got some. Let's see if we can do it.
Oh, do you have it? Oh. Where is it? There we go. The information, then the release. You're killing me, man.
Like I said, we're a little out of practice, but thank you all. Hope you all been having a good summer. Thanks for tuning back in. Yes, opening bell, big news. Obviously, we all know at this point that Vince McMahon, the man who was going to die in WWE, the man embroiled in a scandal that made his future a little uncertain, but has been pretty defiant, apparently eager to hold on. And yet, in today, 5 minutes after the close of the stock market on Friday, Vince McMahon, age 77, announced his retirement from the company that was founded by his father. But let's face it, WWE is in the image of Vince McMahon, and love him or loathe him, WWE and all of pro wrestling of the modern era is in the image of Vince McMahon. It is not an understatement to say that Vince McMahon is the most important figure in the history of pro wrestling, regardless of what you think of him. Doug, we are dedicating a whole show to this in 2 weeks, but hot takes, my friend. How did this news strike you? Were you surprised?
I got this news via text from my nephew that Vince had retired, and my knee-jerk reaction was, things must be going very poorly because I expected this man to die in gorilla position. And I'm sure you do too. I'm sure pretty much anybody in the wrestling world expected Vince to have WWE pride away from his cold dead hands. But here we are, man. Vince retires. Maybe there's something to all these allegations and investigations floating around right now that would reflect very poorly on a publicly traded company.
I have to imagine that, considering his initial reaction was to put himself on TV, on camera, and just to let folks know I'm still running the show together forever. And that was how this man was going to go down. I mean, we all knew he was going to go down swinging like that. Some lawyer, some golden parachute. There's got to be more that we'll uncover, that we'll hopefully be unpacking in 2 weeks when we talk more in depth about this. But despite the fact he was embroiled in an investigation and a scandal, I can't imagine too many people saw the anticlimactic way that Vince McMahon would leave WWE with a late Friday afternoon social media tweet saying, "Thanks, everybody. See you later." I mean, that's really not the way we saw this going down, was it?
It's not the way we saw this going down, but to the majority of those fans that fill up the arenas, stadiums, all these venues week after week after week for these live shows, these fans that were cheering Vince when no chance from hell, hits that music hits and he comes swaggering out that first night after all this story broke and he was on SmackDown that night. Those people were cheering for him. Do those people know or even care? Or are the majority of casual wrestling fans going to say, okay, well, he went out good. He had that, hilarious stunner and, some fun with Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania. He's 77. Good for him. He's had a good run. Is that what the casual wrestling fans are getting here? And, we're the geeks diving way too much into this, right? Is that right? Is that us?
Oh, that's definitely us. I'm not sure about the rest of it, but you got us nailed pretty on point. Yeah, I can't imagine that anybody that's more than just a casual. And yes, wrestling fans can be a fickle lot, and I'm sure that the anti-establishment wrestling fan that cheered when Vince beat the federal government, which he loved to brag about back in the 90s with the steroid trial. This was another reason for Vince McMahon, the myth maker, to put himself as the martyr of WWE that is fighting the man and fighting the system. But there's a big difference between now and 1990, and that is shareholders, corporate partners. I mean, it's just a much different industry. It's not the family mom and pop business where I am, despite how much power I have, I'm not the king and say all be all of the fiefdom anymore. And I think that's really the lesson to take from all of this, is that WWE as a publicly traded company is not the McMahon family dynasty that we saw in the 90s and early 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. There's even Vince McMahon has folks he's accountable to, and that board likely whispered in his ear, you can either walk away quietly or it's going to get ugly for everybody.
So, and it's interesting you say that, because until we were just talking about this, I hadn't thought about it, but I'm pretty sure Vince still owns majority shares of the WWE. So it's also a wise financial decision, because again, if things look really bad, and it's no coincidence that the stock exchange closes, then there's this announcement. So there's not going to be any fallout, if there is any at all, until Monday when stocks start trading again. But it's a financial move too, not just for the company, but really for him. If things are very bad and things start to go south, that's going to affect his pocket too.
Financial and PR, because
absolutely,
when you have bad news, when do you announce bad news? You announce it on Friday afternoon so that you miss the news cycle, you hit the weekend, hopefully something moves in its place, and by Monday it's mostly forgotten about. But we're not forgetting about it, because we'll be talking about it in 2 weeks. There are other things to unpack from this, Doug. For one, it was the news release about Vince's retirement mentioned nothing about the scandal that essentially toppled the man, but it did, however, indicate what the succession plan was. Stephanie McMahon has been named the permanent chairwoman, as well as the co-CEO, along with Nick Khan, co-CEO. That also was a little curious, don't you think?
Absolutely, because when I hear co-CEO, I turn my head sideways, kind of like a dog hearing a new sound for the first time, because what is a co-CEO? What is that? I don't know.
Considering that there is perhaps some truth to the fact that before this scandal got unwinnable for McMahon, that Stephanie had stepped away because he wasn't happy with her performance. Perhaps there was some others who thought that even if she is the heir apparent, and she has always been the succession plan, I mean, we've known that for a while, but it started to look like maybe that wasn't going to be the case. Maybe they think she needs a little help in that regard. So yes, you are the chairwoman, but as far as the day-to-day operations, we'll give someone with some seasoning to co-chair this whole CEO thing with you, and maybe that makes for a easier transition.
Maybe so. And speaking of easy transitions, everything I'm reading and catching on YouTube points to the succession plan being business as usual as far as creative goes. Sounds like we're going to get Vince mentoring and handing off all the creative plans for a while and having a smooth transition there.
Yeah, when this news first broke on Friday, there was some uncertainty because it was not addressed in any of the public materials as to what happens to creative. Is this Vince just stepping away from the business side and then staying so heavily involved with the creative, which was what was kind of happening during the investigation. Stephanie was the chairperson, and Vince was still there Friday nights, Monday nights, doing everything from Gorilla. But no, it's now since come out over the weekend that Bruce Pritchard is likely the one that will be handling creative moving forward. But he's a Vince McMahon guy, and so I know there has to be backstage some hand wringing as to whether or not Vince is really gone. He's the majority stakeholder, a shareholder still, as you pointed out. So he's definitely still holds a lot of sway. It's still a family run business if it's no longer a family business. Do you think that Bruce Pritchard is going to see, will you see a lot of change in creative direction, or do you think that Vince McMahon is maybe puppet stringing this thing from the safety of his home here in Connecticut.
So here's what we're going to see. The rest of the year in WWE is going to be very telling of who's actually in control of creative. I've read that a lot of talent is dejected, including one very big name talent that apparently just walked out of SmackDown hours before, pulled a Sasha and Naomi and just said, "Peace out. If he's gone, I'm gone too." Of course, that didn't last long, so maybe there were some reassurances to him that here's the deal. We're going to work through this. We're still doing business as usual. I really wonder what those conversations were to get Lesnar back in the building to show up at the very end of SmackDown, since, everything's pointing to it being a very, very Lesnar-centric SmackDown, and then the whole show had to be rewritten at the last minute. But that seems to happen a lot with live WWE anyway. But
yeah, talking about some of the other dominoes that come out of this story, Doug, you just alluded to it. For those that do not know, it was widely reported on Friday afternoon that Brock Lesnar got to the building at SmackDown and said, "If Vince is gone, I'm gone," and walked out. This is not a work. Follow-up reports indicated that he did leave the building, and SmackDown had to be completely rewritten in thinking that the Beast was not going to be involved, despite being heavily advertised and expected in that opening segment. However, in the rewrite, they rewrote the last segment in such a way that should Lesnar return to the building, that they could work him in.
It was a complete audible, right? If he returns, we're great. If not, we can go off the air with this angle, kind of a thing.
And Doug, there are reports that they even had a plan, and I have not heard who it would have been, but they had a plan in place should he walk out long term for SummerSlam, which we're going to be reviewing here in a minute. But that's the big main event, and they would have had to punt on that.
Did you hear who they were trying to get on the phone?
No.
Goldberg.
No. Oh, thank you, Brock Lesnar, for returning to the
arena. I believe it was either What Culture Wrestling or Wrestle Talk I was watching this weekend, and they were talking about. Sorry, I can't remember which one. I'll just credit them both. They're both great YouTube shows, but. One of them was talking about how they were considering or had even already made overtures to Goldberg to get a big name in the building for SummerSlam, just in case things didn't turn around with Brock.
Well, I am so happy that Brock Lesnar came back. You talk about a letdown for the summer, and no offense to Goldberg fans, but you're not going to get the same quality of main event out of Goldberg Lesnar Goldberg Reigns that you would out of Lesnar Reigns. So even if we've seen it a lot lately, it's still a much better matchup.
It is. It's not what I want to see again, but a much better matchup than Goldberg.
Doug, another domino that we should mention before we move on to other news, because believe it or not, other things have happened this week. But the Vince news was not the first news release that WWE put out on Friday. Earlier that day, it was announced that Triple H is officially back in a new role. Now, we know he has sort of unofficially been back for months, that he showed up in NXT, told the folks he's back, but his role had been somewhat unclear. Well, Friday, we got the news release that made things clear that Trips is the new VP of Talent Relations. After taking some time off, obviously due to his cardiac event, and then some word that the NXT kerfuffle fell on his shoulders, and the game was sort of sidelined, it seemed, and he is now resuming a position he once held as Executive VP of Talent Relations, though that is not the role he most recently held. Before he left, he was the Executive VP of Global Talent Strategy and Development. But prior to that, he had this President of Talent Relations role. Bruce Pritchard had been filling that role in the interim, and obviously he had been backstage pretty much co-running SmackDown and Raw. Obviously now we need him.
Yes.
Dude, you go right ahead.
Let me stop my camera and mute my mic.
But yes, obviously he has to continue in that role. So Bruce Pritchard now goes back to his duties running Raw and SmackDown, and Triple H is the new VP of Talent Relations. Again, very interesting. We'll be unpacking all of this in 2 weeks when we deep dive on this subject. But at one point, it was just the heir apparent that once Vince McMahon retired or died, Stephanie and Triple H would be running the show. Over the last several months, both Triple H and Stephanie had been pushed to the side by Vince McMahon himself. And yet now, in the midst of his scandal and his fall from grace, they're back. And the board has pretty much certified and sealed the deal that the future of WWE will be in the hands of Triple H and Stephanie. So more to come on that. And as I teed up earlier with Doug, there is, believe it or not, more news in the world of professional wrestling this week. So moving on from that, Ring of Honor last night had their return pay-per-view in some ways. I know they did the one in April, but this was the first pay-per-view. Death Before Dishonor last night was the first pay-per-view that they'd had that was scheduled and booked completely by Tony Khan under the leadership of Tony Khan. The one back in April had already been planned. Some of the matches had already been booked, and so Tony sort of inherited that one. Last night, we saw the first Tony Khan era of Ring of Honor completely with his stamp on it. Probably the most notable thing, actually, and we'll get a lot more about that in our Big Finish segment. I got some more to talk about the specifics of Death Before Dishonor, but some of the bigger news coming out of the Ring of Honor's big weekend is that the Briscoe brothers have been signed to a long-term contract by Tony Khan. This was mentioned during the media scrum held before the event. He revealed the fact that he had, in fact, signed the Briscoes, and not just signed them, but signed them long-term. A few months ago, when Doug and I did our special on ROH Reimagined, the top of our list, both of our lists, was first thing Tony Khan needs to do is sign the Briscoes. That is the must-buy contracts for Tony to acquire. And so the fact that he did so, it makes sense completely. The Briscoes are legends in Ring of Honor, one of the best tag teams of their generation, one of the names most associated with Ring of Honor. So if you want named talent that people can get behind that are Ring of Honor originals, it makes all the sense in the world to have them under contract. So good on Tony Khan for signing them to a long-term deal. But comings were not the only thing with Ring of Honor's busy weekend. Goings occurred as well, where Jonathan Grisham, who going into this weekend was the ROH World Champion, the last ROH World Champion under its original ownership, or the last ownership, and the man who held that title and literally defended it around the world, even though Ring of Honor itself didn't exist. He kept the ROH brand alive by going to different promotions and defending the ROH World Championship. Jonathan Grisham, the former now world champion of Ring of Honor, apparently is gone from AEW Ring of Honor after an argument with Tony Khan, an argument that reportedly took place right before the match that he was to have with Claudio Castagnoli. Apparently, Grisham had felt disrespected with what he saw as a general lack of communication over the last couple of months, and then apparently was also unhappy with the length of time that the match of the world title match was going to be given, and had a confrontation with Tony before the event, and apparently cussed Tony Khan out and asked for his release from Ring of Honor and AEW, which no word yet on whether or not that is going to be granted, but we'll keep you informed more as going forward. So keeping score, Briscoe brothers in long-term, Jonathan Grisham apparently out.
Wait, was that all about Grisham?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to take this call because work and stuff. But that was Grisham? And
yes.
Okay, because I have not heard that. I know that Grisham is no longer the ROH champion.
Yes, apparently right beforehand, I was just telling the folks, Doug, long story short, to catch you up, but apparently was not happy with the lack of communication over the last couple of months with Tony Khan, and then really unhappy when he got to the building and found out they were going on first and the amount of time they had, and the confrontation turned ugly. Depending on which report, he either asked for his release or was let go after cussing Tony Khan out. And Grisham was one of the first people that Tony had signed to Ring of Honor.
So I wonder if that was there anything about the outcome, or was he just mad about the lack of communication and the time? Because I totally get putting the belt on Claudio, because that is the name may not be that recognizable to mainstream audiences for ROH, but the face definitely is. And you want to get ROH back out there in the forefront. You put Cesaro up against Grisham. Okay, both great wrestlers, but one just like Jericho Hangman back in the day when Jericho got the original belt for AEW. Yeah, it makes sense to me to do that for Cesaro, Claudio. See, I'm going to do it for one.
That's going to be, yeah.
But that's interesting. I had not heard that.
Also apparently gone. Again, big news coming out of Ring of Honor's weekend. WWE didn't dominate all of the news, but Tully Blanchard is apparently gone. Tully Blanchard had been heavily involved in the build-up to Death Before Dishonor. He had been given a faction that he pulled in. Brian Cage, for example. Tully Blanchard Enterprises looked like it was going to be an ROH stable and that he was moving on from FTR and AEW and being moved over to the Ring of Honor side. But in a storyline, Prince Nana, a name from the past of Ring of Honor, returned and claimed in the 0 Hour pre-show that he had purchased Tully Blanchard Enterprises and had renamed it the Embassy, which was Nana's original group back in ROH like 15 years ago.
Yes, I remember the Embassy.
And the Embassy is back, and apparently it's legit. No one truly knows the reason why. I've read everything from conflicts with his prison ministry that he does or other things, but that Tully Blanchard, this isn't an angle. It isn't that they just changed creative direction and they have something else for him. The word is right now that he is effectively done with AEW / Ring of Honor.
Interesting. I take a phone call, walk out, and make all kinds of stuff.
It's a good thing we have this news segment to catch you up.
Tony Khan saying, "Don't pay any attention to anything Kevin says next."
Don't worry, he'll be happy. I'm moving on back to WWE because while we've been out, WWE continues to play the rename game. Former NXT UK champs, the Grizzled Young Veterans, are the latest to get the rebrand. In this instance, the former Zach Gibson is now Rip Fowler, and his tag team partner James Drake will become Jagger Reed.
God, those are horrible names.
Also, since our hiatus, Jordan Devlin was moved from NXT UK to NXT proper and is now going by the name JD McDonough.
Okay, that's not too bad.
It's not bad, but why?
At least it's not Rip Thorn or wait a minute. We know a Rip Thorn. Don't wait, there's a Rip Thorn or Rip Thorn.
And did you happen to catch SmackDown on Friday?
I have, because of phone calls and work-related incidents, I have not caught any wrestling. I'm going to say the entire time we've been off, my wrestling viewing has went through like What Culture and really Wrestle Talk, and I kind of get caught up like that, like bite-sized bits on YouTube. So I have not seen any kind of SmackDown.
So Sophia Cromwell from NXT, who hasn't been even on NXT that long, has been called up and is on the main roster now and is Maxine Dupree. And
okay, I heard about this, that LA Knight, Eli Drake, is out of his own faction because
Max Dupree is apparently been replaced by his sister, quote unquote sister, Maxine Dupree, Sophia Cromwell in NXT. And apparently 2 weeks ago when Eli Drake, as I still would like to call him, was doing the whole male models gimmick on SmackDown, he knew at that time that he was going to be replaced in that role. Apparently this was one of the last decisions, ironically enough, of the old man himself. Vince did not think that it was working out and that they needed to shake things up and get Eli out of that. Now, there's no word on what Eli will be doing or if Vince just soured on him in general, or with Vince gone, if maybe Eli has a new lease on life. He is way too talented a guy on the mic and in the ring to not have any creative direction. So hopefully creative will have something for the very talented Eli Drake that's better than that stupid male models gimmick in anyway. And then the last bit of news, Doug, that I had is that MLW is currently on hiatus, and that's something that they do that I think is honestly a lot of wrestling companies would maybe benefit from having an off season. But they finished up big by paying off their Alexander Hammerstone, Richard Holiday feud, something that had been so building and ongoing for so long that it dates back to the days when MJF was leading that faction, the Dynasty, back in MLW. There's your long-term booking, and they've saved it as their season finale, which is another great way to end the season on a on a high note that you can do when you don't go week by week. They're going to be off the summer, come back in September. I mention it only because that is news in itself, but it's rumored that they will not only be coming back, but they'll be coming back, and for the first time in company history, be coming back to not just doing television, but doing house shows and national touring as well. So stay tuned on that. Big news moving up for the independent MLW.
Nice.
And with that, Doug.
Oh, let me pull my notes up. And by notes, I mean my Wikipedia that says what the SmackDown, or not the SmackDown, but the SummerSlam events are.
Doug has already mentioned, Doug's already outed himself as like having no idea of what's going on in wrestling. So you might want to take fans with a grain of salt, any of his predictions.
all my predictions are going to be spot on. Because I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up wrestling like Roman Reigns in the main event if Lesnar finds out that Vince really is for real gone.
Craziness abounds, and then the second biggest show of the weekend, or of the year rather, right, of WWE's season, SummerSlam, a little earlier than normal this year, happening just down the road a piece from us in Nashville. Doug, SummerSlam, if you want me to kick it off, I got to say we'll go with the feud I know you're most interested in, and that's anything involving Happy Corbin. So,
see, I thought that you were really going to go Logan Paul. So, but we'll go with Logan Paul. I want to see Happy Corbin versus Logan Paul. That's what I want to say.
Unfortunately, we have two celebrity matches again, just like WrestleMania. Well, no, WrestleMania, I guess, had 4 essentially. So I guess we're down to 2. This is Saturday night, by the way, folks. That seems to be the new night for WWE doing their bigger pay-per-views. Next Saturday, SummerSlam. Happy Corbin versus Pat McAfee. I guess if you had good things to say about this, Doug, is that they have dedicated TV time to it. They have built the feud. This dates back in many ways, even pre-WrestleMania, but they hinted at it at WrestleMania, and there's been attacks at the announce desk and those sorts of things. But Pat McAfee obviously surprises folks when he gets in the ring, so there's really you can't really be surprised by him any longer. But how do you see this one going down, or how do you wish this one to go down?
McAfee's great at what he does. That other dude's a wrestler. I'm going to go with McAfee.
I love the insightful commentary. You got the one guy, and then you got the other dude that's a wrestler. So, being wrestling, the other dude's going to win.
The announcer that's incredibly athletic and a former NFL kicker is going to win.
In any other line of work, that would be the craziest thing you've ever said. But I'm agreeing with you because by wrestling logic, the celebrity, especially if they're a face, almost always wins.
Absolutely.
And Happy Corbin or Baron Corbin or Unlucky Corbin or bum-ass Corbin, whatever you want to call him.
Oh, wait a minute. I was getting, in my mind, it wasn't even clicking. It's Happy Corbin. It's not the other one, the Madcap guy.
No.
This is how much wrestling I've actually seen in the past couple of weeks.
I know legit what big Madcap fan you are. No, we're talking about the one you don't like, Happy Corbin.
Yeah, well, I concur. This guy is also a wrestler.
Therefore, he must lose.
And my initial prediction when I thought it was the other dude who's a wrestler still stands. He's not a wrestler, but an announcer, and incredibly athletic, former NFL kicker, is going to win.
Pat is over. The fans like him, and Happy has found his place in WWE, which seems to be the gatekeeper feud guy that you go through and that doesn't win very often. And I do not expect him to on this night either.
No.
Since you already teed it up, Doug, and I know that obviously it means how eager you are to talk about it, let's go ahead and talk Logan Paul versus The Miz. Doug, while we were out, they didn't just sign Logan Paul to a SummerSlam match. They have signed Logan Paul long-term. I don't know how many dates that is or what long-term is, but he actually is under a wrestling contract now. Credit where it's due, though. If you didn't, I know you probably haven't caught a lot, but he did a promo 2 weeks ago that I have to admit was not bad. Doesn't make me want to see this match, but it still was actually pretty good. So maybe he's really serious and dedicated to this.
Here's the thing. We've seen that he's pretty athletic. Not actually athletic, but definitely athletic.
He held his own at Mania.
He understands the product. He has a built-in audience. Always good for WWE. he's got mic skills. I mean, he is an entertainer. He's an athletic entertainer. Miz, like the other dude, is a wrestler.
Therefore, A plus B equals.
Logan Paul's going to win this, and Miz turns face after that, and the feud continues because Miz can work babyface. Logan Paul in a WWE audience is not going to be able to work face for a while. He's going to have to work really hard for it. I don't think he's got that in him. I think he can hold his own in the ring. He can cut promos. He is a natural heel, much like Miz. But, when we have a natural heel versus natural heel, Miz is going to have to go babyface after Logan Paul wins. And then we'll continue this, whatever this is. So,
much like the first match we discussed, I really do not care about this match at all, despite the fact that the entertainers involved are actually more athletic than your typical, I'm just moonlighting in professional wrestling entertainer. That doesn't mean that I'm invested in this feud or in Logan Paul or his future in WWE. But I think Miz has actually been around so long, he's probably overlooked at this point for actually how good he is, and he will help to make Logan Paul look even better than Logan Paul is. So this match, even though I could care less, will probably surprise folks who have low expectations or no expectations. It'll probably go Logan Paul's way because, again, like you said, the other guy is the wrestler. So Logan Paul, I'm with you.
Right.
We're both aboard the Logan Paul train.
Choo choo.
Let's talk about something a little more substantial. What do you say?
All right, let's do it. What are we talking about?
How about Seth Rollins?
Seth freaking
Rollins and Riddle, who defending, his best bro, Randy. I just love the way he says Randy. What do you think of this one, Doug? Seth Rollins, I know, took the bad end of the feud with Cody Rhodes, losing all the time. It seems in some ways that he needs the win, but to me, Riddle kind of needs the win too. So this is to be an interesting booking.
So this could, with these two dudes, be match of the night. Just looking at the rest of the card here, especially, I think, if it's not the tag team match, this is going to be match of the night with these two. Because these two are both amazing athletes, great performers, great wrestlers. Rollins, I agree, does need a win. Riddle does too, though. It comes down to who is going to be hurt less by taking the L here, and I think that's Rollins. I think Rollins can bounce back. I think Rollins Teflon, really, at this point, because he's Seth freaking Rollins. So I'm going to go with Riddle, I think, on this, because Riddle, I think, needs a win.
I think we're in some lockstep here because this is the third one we're predicting the same. I got to give this one to Riddle because I'm looking at the rest of the card and I'm seeing a lot of heels in my mind going over. So I think we need some feel good. If you get Randy Orton involved, if Cody Rhodes makes his return to get some retribution on Seth, there's a lot of ways Seth can lose without losing face. Again, he's Teflon. But to continue him on into another feud and to give Riddle the victory that I think he needs more sorely than Seth Rollins needs the victory, even though right now they both seem like they are the ones that usually get the 1, 2, 3. I'm going Riddle as well.
Yeah.
But I agree, too, that athletically, this match on paper looks like a show stealer, along with that tag team match and maybe one of the women's contests we'll be getting here in a minute also.
Yeah.
Lashley is defending his U.S. championship against Vince McMahon's chosen one, Theory. And now I'm wondering, does Theory still have a champion now that Vince McMahon is retired?
So Theory has the juice, man. He's got it. He really does. I'm not real crazy about this character, but we saw him live at one of our last wrestling events before the great global nonsense started happening. NXT event. The kid has got it, right? But you put him up against Bobby Lashley, and there becomes this real question of, can he do that? I mean, just logically, you look at these two guys on paper, or you just look at these two guys side by side, and I want to say Lashley should come out on top here. But, shenanigans. So
I think we're going 4 for 4. I'm going Lashley also. And I think that Theory has shown that he is going to make a big money for WWE. I think he is rewarding Vince's faith in him because he looks great in the role that they've given him. He's looked good in the main events they've put him in, whatever they've asked him to do on the mic, in the ring. He's going to be big money. He's still really young. He also has that Money in the Bank contract. And I think that that's where his storyline continues to go, centered on that. This is a diversion to get through a SummerSlam match, get a rematch in with Lashley, who dominated him and took the title from him last time. I think the same thing can happen again, and he still is going to be a threat to come in and take advantage of a wounded champion at some point in time with that contract. So I think that Lashley throws him around, and being the cowardly heel that Theory plays so well, that he still doesn't lose anything from slinking away with his tail between his legs, waiting for an opportune time to come take advantage of a hurt opponent, a smaller opponent, a downed opponent with that briefcase and cashing in down the road. So I think that that's the way they book this one.
I think that's reasonable. And, it's all, the armchair booker is turning in my head. What we could have very well see with what you're saying there is, of course, he loses. Of course, there's still a thought he's got the Money in the Bank. Lesnar, well, let's just jump to Roman Reigns, Lesnar right now and just talk about this because I got an idea in my head now.
All right.
Lesnar will not win.
We're just going straight to the main event. Doug just
going straight to the main event because I think the
now, wait a minute. Lesnar will not win, or Lesnar will not show up. Clarify.
Okay, hold on. Lesnar shows up, he will lose. But he will decimate Roman Reigns. And the Usos as well. Because the Usos will be taken out earlier. If they're not taken out in their tag match, we'll talk about tag. I'm all over the place now, but I'm like armchair booking now. But I think Theory will try and cash in, and it'll be a botch, and he will lose his Money in the Bank next weekend.
Oh, okay. That's some big predictions. I don't know I don't know that I would go that far, but that is a definite.
Hey, it's been a while since we've been on. I'm going big tonight, man. Going big.
All right, I'm going to get back to Lesnar Reigns. How about that? Let's go Liv Morgan, Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's title. This is a rematch. We're talking Money in the Bank cash-in, so this is a good spot to transition to that match because that is exactly what happened with Liv Morgan at the last pay-per-view, won the female Money in the Bank contract match, and then almost immediately when opportunity arose, cashed in on Ronda Rousey and beat her. Word backstage, Doug, is that Liv, who has always been a fan favorite and the fans have wanted, and WWE seemed hesitant to ever really put the push behind her, is getting this role because they realized they didn't have any strong baby faces, especially since Sasha and Naomi walked out. So that's why Liv's getting this opportunity. She just got this. Do you think that Ronda takes her and takes it right back, or do you think they run with Liv a little while longer?
I think they run with Liv a little while longer, and I've also heard like rumblings that it was Ronda that said we need to put this belt on somebody who deserves it, who's who is this person. So my predictions here is that on paper, just like Lashley Theory, you look at Rousey, legit one of the baddest women on the planet, and then there's Liv, a wrestler, as we've discussed earlier. But I think Rousey does the job here and solidifies the legitimacy of Liv's championship. I think it will be a very athletic, a very good contest. It's not going to be match of the night, but Rousey is going to do her best to put Liv over and solidify that. It's not just a fluke, not just like a one-hit wonder kind of thing, but that Liv belongs in that title picture with that belt, and that's my prediction. I'm sticking with it.
So who knows behind the scenes what the writers, Vince, and the bookers, all involved in the decision-making thought. Maybe when they put the title on Liv, maybe this is a one-off feel-good moment for the crowd tonight to give them something when it didn't appear that much would be changing otherwise. But I think that even if that was the original plan, that the reactions that Liv Morgan has been getting has probably changed a lot of minds. There's a reason that the girl legitimately tears up when she gets in front of the crowd, because they have wanted this for her. Heck, for a year here, I predicted her almost month by month that she was going to win the Royal Rumble. She was going to win her title match, and she every time, like the Charlie Brown with the football getting moved right before he kicks it. And they finally gave it to her, and the crowd, you gave them what they want, and guess what? They're happy with it, and they're absolutely loving on her every time she comes out. I see no reason at this point to take that away from her. She's a lifelong wrestling fan who legitimately fought her way out of poverty and who wanted this since she was a child. She didn't come from cheerleading or another sport or modeling or anything else. This girl was born to be a professional wrestler, now a young woman who is living out her dream. How she beats Ronda Rousey, I may disagree with you on that one, but I definitely agree with you on the finish. I'm not just – it would be awesome if Ronda would do the job just cleanly, but it is hard to imagine how – maybe have Ronda slip on a banana peel or something. Like, how do you legitimately have Liv Morgan take down Ronda Rousey?
Right.
But there was a great exchange that they had on Friday night where Ronda pretty much got in her face, and Liv just spelled it out and said that I'm not saying that I'm better than you or that I will be better than you on Saturday night, but I want this more than you. That's why I'll win. I won't win because I'm better. I will win because I want it more. So,
and that's a great underdog story. I think Rousey will legitimize this championship of Liv's, and Ronda is like Lesnar. If Ronda loses, so what? It does not matter.
She's still Ronda Rousey, right?
Exactly.
And Ronda, has one of those interesting WWE deals where she's not on the house shows and she kind of comes and goes as she pleases. So SummerSlam's next to Mania, the biggest show of the year for WWE. Who knows? Maybe she does put her over, and by the time we see her again, no one will even remember it happened.
I mean, if there's some shenanigans here because, wrestling, maybe Charlotte shows up. Enough for Charlotte's music to hit is enough of a classic distraction for Liv to get the surprise roll up 1, 2, 3, and it's over. I don't like that finish, but
there's a lot of ways they could go with it. We'll see if they go the hard route of putting her over as a legitimate threat, or the recipient of fortunate luck turning her way. But I would be very disappointed if they went back to Ronda this soon.
Yeah, me too.
Bianca Belair is defending the Raw Women's Championship against the woman who beat her at last year's SummerSlam when she made her surprise return, and that being Becky Lynch. Doug, does the history repeat itself and Becky Lynch goes over 2 SummerSlams in a row, or does Bianca get her year-in-the-making revenge against the man and actually has a real match this year and takes it?
Definitely a real match. Definitely going to be a great match. This one's a hard one for me to call, man, because both these are great. I really love the belt on Bianca. I think Lynch doesn't pull the upset she did last year in 30 seconds or whatever it was, if it was even that long. But it's Lynch all the way this time around.
I think we have our first divergence.
Divergence.
I'm going to say that because of the way the main event's going down, and you've already previewed your take on that, I think that we give the face the victory here at SummerSlam, and Bianca gets her revenge in a much, much better contest. And honestly, I think that this has the potential to be the match of the night because these women are motivated and unbelievable at what they do. I'm very much looking forward to this one. This is actually one of the ones that has more intrigue. Some of them to me seem a little more cut and dry. This one really could go either way. I could definitely see your side of things here, your booking, that prediction you have. If they go that way, I wouldn't be surprised, and I honestly wouldn't be disappointed either. This is one where we all win. No one loses in this one because it's going to be great.
Absolutely.
Which gets us.
What do we have left here? Oh, okay.
We got the 2 bloodline matches. So let's start tags. We're going Jimmy and Jay versus the Street Profits for the undisputed WWE Tag Team titles. Usos being the champions here. I'm interested in how you think this one's going down, because I'm curious as if we have another divergence here.
Why is Jeff Jarrett the special guest referee? Why is that?
Because you're
happening? Because wrestling?
Because you even having to ask makes you a slap nuts.
Okay, I didn't realize Jarrett was actually. I am reading this right.
Yeah, you haven't hit your head and gone back in time. Jeff Jarrett is involved in this contest.
Okay, so by the end of the night, somebody's getting hit over the head with an acoustic guitar.
Has to, right?
And I'm saying it's Angelo Dawkins. And the bloodline retains.
Okay, we have another divergence, because I think it's so clear what's probably going to happen in the men's world title match that I think you need a little intrigue into the bloodline storyline. And maybe the best way to do that is to have the Street Profits go over as the undisputed tag team champions, and Roman Reigns be very, very unhappy with his cousins moving forward, because it's obvious that they're holding on to Roman in that title for something bigger down the road. What that is, we do not yet know who the threat could possibly be, and may not be until WrestleMania season. So how do you keep some intrigue in that storyline, other than maybe to tease some dissension by having the Usos let him down by loosening the grip on all the titles by dropping it to the Street Profits? I'm not saying the Street Profits will carry it a long time, but I think the Street Profits walk away from SummerSlam to give, at least at the upper end of the card, one more thing for the fans of the Faces to cheer about.
The Faces, the band from the 70s, or?
I mean, I would cheer for that too.
Right, Rod Stewart. Come on, man. You used to rock, dude. What's up? This is the wrestling show. That leaves us with the main event, which I've already showed my cards on this one, man.
Well, I only saved it for myself because I wanted to point out to the folks that it is a last man standing match, as well as being for the undisputed title. And as a last man standing match, it's, for whatever reason, it doesn't really make a lot of logical sense. But by WWE logic, if you have any sort of stipulation in a match, it usually means that there are no disqualifications and anything can go. So in order for Brock Lesnar to lose again, it's very likely that there will be a ton of people involved in this, including obviously the Usos themselves. And who knows, it also being SummerSlam would be a good opportunity to introduce new folks to new storylines by having others get involved, be it Theory and a cash in or something. There will be multiple moving parts to this one, Doug. It will not just be these two men involved in a last man standing match. I expect this to be better than the WrestleMania match, only because that match was passable. It was fine, but for all the build and as much as everyone had looked forward to it, a legit injury early on in the match kept it from being what it could have been. I think they escaped that this time and have a better contest, but same result.
Yeah, the tribal chief remains at the end of the day. We acknowledge him once again on next Saturday night. And in theory, he's going to try to cash in and get squashed completely.
Oh, I mean, that would give an added element to the ending of what a lot of people are already going to assume will be a Roman Reigns victory celebration. So I think anything they can do to put a little intrigue into SummerSlam, it is, after all, SummerSlam.
Right.
It's a stadium. It's a big deal. Maybe they surprise us. I mean, I'd love to see us be completely off base with one of these.
Dude, I would love to be completely wrong, be shocked.
Yeah, shocked.
Jumping up and down and screaming, just like I was when I watched the Wakanda Forever trailer earlier today. That's what I want out of my SummerSlam. Give me those feels.
I don't know that you're going to get those, but I think that we will probably see something that shakes things up and moves them into the next season. If it's a return, a new signee, they got to do something, because on paper, the card overall looks pretty predictable, and that's not what you want for your SummerSlam. So I hope we are wrong about one of these. And I'm not one for saying you need to shock just for the shock value's sake. Yeah. I'm all for let's do things that make logical sense. Down the road, Rock versus his cousin is so much money on the table. if that's the way that they're holding this, then I'm fine to have a dominant champion compete. But that means elsewhere on the card, you're going to have to give us something.
That's true. And with Reigns being in a Lesnar schedule now, I think it hurts Raw and SmackDown having a unified champion, that's not neither show. And, I think it hurts both shows, but I think there's something very special about whoever the person that defeats him and even breaks one of those titles off away from him. There's going to be something very special about that person to strap a rocket to. Well, by that time they'll be shooting past the moon, but
at this point, we do not believe Lesnar at SummerSlam is that guy.
No, it's not Lesnar. It doesn't need to be Lesnar. Lesnar's, in case of emergency, break glass. That's what Lesnar is for Vince McMahon. Now that Vince is gone,
who knows?
Let's build some new stars, man. Let's let them keep their names, not give them silly names. Let's build some new stars, give them good names, or let them keep their own. and go forward, man.
Go forward. Go forward we shall, Doug. Into next weekend. Next Saturday is SummerSlam. Next Sunday, we are live at our regular time, 8 o'clock Eastern, here on Facebook. Slight delay on YouTube, but we will be reviewing SummerSlam. Rather than do a midnight Saturday night show, we're going to keep our regular time on Sunday. We're going to let WWE have their Saturday night events, and in general, we'll be doing the reviews and recaps the next day. So take your all's notes. Let us know what you think. Come armed to talk about it next week. We're going to see who was right, who was wrong, and let us know in the comments what you think, who's going to win, who's right or who's wrong. And with that, Doug,
is it time for the big finish?
Do you remember how to do this?
I do, man. But again, I've already thrown it out there. Not a lot of wrestling. I can comment on my clips I've seen. And I'm very grateful to other wrestling shows on YouTube that give me clips and things that they've talked about. I really wanted to maybe smush a botch and a performer into something involving Vince, but I feel it's too soon. I will say that I have seen Stephanie come out, at the beginning of SmackDown, and I think it's legitimately heartbreaking when she says her bit about Vince, leads the we love you Vince or thank you Vince channel, whatever it even was. But then when she turns to the camera and says, "Love you, Dad," and then she's done, it gives me feels, not like Wakanda Forever feels, but it gives me a little feels. But I don't think that was a performance. I think that was legit. So I'm going to restrain and wait for my Vince rants when we do our Vince show. So I'm going to let you just take it away with, botch performance match, man.
All right. You're not going to like this first one, Doug. I'm going to warn you in advance.
Is this where Tony calls me again?
My botch of the week. Sometimes less is more. Let's go back. Let's just take it back a little bit. For generations, wrestling worked by star beats jobber, stars get over, you pay money to see the stars come to your local arena and fight other stars. Or later on evolved into, we'll give you squash matches and then you pay to see the big matches on pay-per-view.
Right.
Obviously that went out the door with Raw and Nitro and the Monday Night Wars. They got so involved with ratings. Hotshot booking started to be a thing where, yes, you couldn't put the genie back in the bottle. You couldn't go back to squash matches. It was way too entertaining, way too good. But at the same time, you burned through angles so fast. Or you gave away finishes trying to pop a rating that probably should have been saved for that local arena show or the big pay-per-view. And to me, I love it. It's not like the matches ever disappoint, but there is such thing as too much of a good thing. And AEW, I think, is so interested, Tony's so interested in touting those ratings that it seems like every week there's something that could have probably been saved for the pay-per-view. So my botch of the week is the barbed wire everywhere match, as too much of a good thing for especially being on free TV. I'm not opposed to giving fans their money's worth, but they keep trying to push the envelope further a lot of times with these blood and gut kind of matches. And I think less is more. If you save those for every couple of months, seeing a guy bleed like a stuck pig means more than if it just happened the last week on free TV. Now, this wasn't a hot shot angle. So I'm not leveling that particular criticism at this, because Eddie Jericho, this is the blow off to that feud, and that is a feud that has been ongoing for a while. But my point is, the ending to the Eddie Jericho feud should be on pay-per-view. Also, there was just a lot of botches involved in this match itself. It was overall very good, very violent, but there was just so many moving parts. Again, that whole AEW concept sometimes of more is more when it shouldn't be. It just made it sloppy. There was a barbed wire chair that was supposed to get Eddie in the face as part of a code breaker, but instead the chair, they missed the spot, so the chair just kind of fell down instead into Jericho's face. There was a post-match beatdown where Eddie was supposed to get his comeuppance, but that ended up being just a mess, as they were obviously trying to communicate as to who threw who into whom, because there were so many bodies and people involved. The funniest moment may have been the Anna Jay turn, because, yes, the Anna Jay is now a heel. It led to Ty Conti being unable to unlock the shark cage. And so therefore, as she fumbled with the key, the Jericho Appreciation Society simply stepped through the bars to escape. And if all of that sounded like a lot to be going on at once, it's because it was.
So, having not seen this and just heard bits and pieces about it on other outlets that have covered it, I have so many questions. Like, first of all,
shark cage or Anna Jay heel, or where do you want to begin?
Well, my first thought is, why wasn't Ty in the shark cage with everybody else? Because she is a member of the JAS, just like Sammy. Is the rest of the Dark Order heel, or is Anna broken from the Dark Order? And why, if they give Eddie his heat back with a post-match beatdown, why don't they just let Eddie win? And these are all valid criticisms that I have at AEW, but these are things just you're telling me I have questions about.
There's a lot to unpack from all of that scenario. It was way too much, and way too much for a main event on Dynamite. I love that they give us a lot on Dynamite. Heck, you and I are seeing Dynamite here in a few weeks. I hope they give us the whole kitchen sink, but sometimes AEW kind of trips over their own feet when they try to do too much. And I'm looking, at the exploding barbed wire match when, sometimes they obviously have enough talent to do just a straight up hardcore match or a straight up technical match. They don't need to do everything at once. And this was 20 million people involved when it really should have just been more focused on blowing off the Eddie Jericho feud. And it should have been saved for pay-per-view.
Yes.
My performance of the week, Doug. Claudio Castagnoli, man.
I haven't seen it yet. I plan to try and catch some wrestling later when we go off the air. But
Claudio Castagnoli, the match was great. I mean, it was good. The whole event was good. It felt like Ring of Honor. It looked like Ring of Honor. Martinez and Deeb put on a great women's match. Yuta, he and Garcia blew my mind with a great technical contest. Somehow Joe and Lethal rolled the clocks of time back like 10 years, was way better than you would have expected the match at this point in Joe's career to be. I mean, just up and down the card, it was great. But Claudio Castagnoli has been doing this for 22 years, and last night was rewarded with the World Championship of Ring of Honor, something he never achieved when he was in the company itself, something he never achieved in NXT, despite being a loyal soldier for decades in the wrestling business. And for Vince McMahon, he never, ever got really – he had that one brief moment at WrestleMania where you thought maybe they were going to lead to something with him. You talk about a guy who never got his due. He comes to AEW. The fans treat him like a star. Let the powers that be know this is the guy we want. And Tony gave it to him.
Absolutely.
Ring of Honor World Champion, Claudio Castagnoli, someone you can build around more so than Jonathan Grisham. No offense to the great technical octopus there. But Claudio, man, feel good.
That's what I was saying earlier, man. Did you call him the technical octopus?
He's the octopus, but yes, he's the technical octopus.
So, or Swiss Superman. So, but it makes sense. It makes sense if you're going to build Ring of Honor now, just like it makes sense. Even though Hangman was the favorite back in the day because it's Hangman. He's one of those five guys that came in, not the hamburger guys, but the guys who built AEW. He it just makes sense. Just like Jericho going over in the beginning, it just makes sense. So,
and it was a feel-good moment. It's what the fans wanted, and they gave it to him, and they gave him the guy that they know has worked his butt off for it, and has deserved it for so long, and he finally gets it. That's a beautiful moment in wrestling when that happens, and so kudos to Claudio Castagnoli for 22 years. For betting on yourself, for turning down for waiting out a contract that you didn't get yourself shortchanged. WWE tried to shortchange him, said he wasn't worth what he thought he was worth. He took his ball and is now being rewarded.
And can we just for a minute talk about how Blackpool Combat Club is just dripping in gold now?
Dripping in gold now. And yes, it was a great event. That leads me to my match of the week, and I intentionally talked about all those other great Ring of Honor matches and left one out, which can almost be predicted as being the match of the week. Don't ever let Vince McMahon or WWE convince you that tag teams do not draw, tag teams do not make money. Tag teams can make great television. They gave those men an hour last night. They main evented Ring of Honor's Death Before Dishonor, FTR versus the Briscoes. They went 15 minutes. It was a 2 out of 3 falls contest. Honestly, my complaint usually with 2 out of 3 fall contests is that they don't happen in natural manner because you're trying to squeeze in usually 3 falls. It rarely is a sweep. The falls end up occurring way quicker than they would had it been just a regular match. No, last night, the first fall did not happen until 20 minutes into the contest, and fall number 3 happened at around the 50-minute mark. In between, these men took it to the mat. They chopped each other so hard that literally Dax Harwood began bleeding from his chest. They went, it broke down. It went into the crowd. It got hardcore. Jay Briscoe had the Crimson Mask going on. The fans, because it was a Ring of Honor branded event, they were super into the Briscoes, but because AEW is a more popular brand and it was filled with so many AEW fans in the ring, the crowd began to be kind of torn between who they were rooting for. The Briscoes at some point bust out a ring bell and, do a heel move. And so then the crowd is firmly on the side of FTR for a while, but then the Briscoes get them back. The fans just were, in the end, it just ended up one big ROH chant because they loved the product they were seeing. They loved both teams. They were chanting tag team wrestling. It was everything that was the spirit of Ring of Honor, and shows, I think, that Tony can capture that spirit and harness that spirit by keeping Ring of Honor true to what it is always supposed to be. And that was contests like what they put on last night. Absolutely a 5-star classic, worst thing, bell to bell. FTR are still your champions. They retained, but this was one of those where everyone came out of it looking like $1 million, and the crowd was so hot. It'll be interesting to see what the final numbers are, but if what Ian Riccaboni was saying was true, this was already, preliminarily speaking, one of the top 4 in-person grosses they ever had for a gate, and also in the top 4 orders ever for a Ring of Honor pay-per-view. So I say that, especially when you don't have a distribution deal yet, and a lot of these guys are only semi-familiar to the AEW audience, I think you have to be pretty satisfied with the way that this one shook out.
That, and let me just say, Vince McMahon saw FTR as a comedy act. Vince McMahon's retired now.
Yes. And wait till you watch, Doug, and you hear when you hear Dax on the microphone afterwards, he puts it. I mean, there's a great post-match moment between the two teams, and a really sincere moment from Dax about the state of tag team wrestling, his love of wrestling in general, the passion for what they had just done, his obvious excitement for realizing now that is what it's all about, what we just did for the last 50 minutes. It was just a beautiful hour of time that if you didn't get to watch any of it last night, folks, definitely tune in to Death Before Dishonor, beginning to end, a great show, but that main event, good stuff.
All right, man. That is I think that all that we need to say has been said tonight about the state of wrestling as of 9:04 p.m. on a Sunday. It is, yes, on a Sunday night.
It's Sunday.
In the middle of the summer.
SummerSlam is next Saturday night. Thank you, folks, for joining us. Thank you I hope your summer is going well. Appreciate you waiting out our break. We are back. We're on for the next several weeks. You see our schedule going down there. Next week, we recap SummerSlam for you. The week after that, we talk about this whole Vince McMahon fall from grace and where we go from here. Until that time, Doug, I will see you, and we'll see everybody next Sunday night.
Next Sunday, everybody watch some more wrestling. I'm certainly going to try to this week. Don't work too hard. We'll see you next week. Bye.